I'm Tim Wenzl, a local author in Dodge City, and I recently wrote a book entitled Dodge City's Mexican Village, A Place in Time. It existed basically from 1906 to 1956. The reason for doing the book was actually to document the community, to present the history of this community that existed at the same time Dodge City proper existed. This was its own community, a Hispanic community where the only language that was spoken was Spanish.
What became known as the Mexican Village was formed around 1910. It was located south of the railroad tracks on the eastern half of Dodge City and housed Mexican immigrants and Mexican Americans who worked for the Santa Fe Railway and their families. The Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway constructed housing for their Mexican employees in the railroad yard near the depot. Those who came north from Mexico included men, either single, or some who were working to make money to send for their families. Some brought their families with them. This settlement, known as the Mexican Village, lasted for almost 50 years. Most of the first homes in the village were constructed of railroad ties and discarded lumber.
My name is Frank Sumaya. I have resided at the Mexican Village, which is originally known as La Yarda for the Spanish-speaking people, and lived there for 10 years from 46 to 56 until the Mexican Village was torn down. The Mexican Village came to be in the early 1900s, largely due to the migration of the Mexicans from Mexico, because they were trying to escape the revolution and poverty. Railroad was booming at that time, and they needed workers to work on the rail yards and the tracks. And so they would go down and pick these people up at the border and bring them up here. Now the railroad needed them year round, so that's why they formed the Mexican Village on railroad land, so that they could bring their families and stay throughout the year and keep them as employees.
In 1913, Santa Fe constructed a new roundhouse, and the village location was relocated to a new site. The homes were devoid of paint, with wooden or dirt floors and tar paper on the roofs. The only furniture was a few chairs and beds. There was no indoor plumbing, and water was carried from 2 hydrants. Families planted gardens and raised chickens, and made rent or lease payments to the railroad. The village was a community in itself, complete with its own grocery store, a dance hall, pool hall, and later a church and school.
The role of the church was very important to the Mexican people, because when they had come from Mexico, that was a high priority to them. And so when they came here, they continued as part of their culture. The society was basically just within the village. And so they were united in their getting together and having fiestas and basically supporting one another. And we were all poor, but we were happy. We didn't know the difference between what having money and being poor was. The culture of the Mexican Village was highly sophisticated, largely due because of the number of immigrants that came from Mexico and their tradition along with their culture. We had our fiestas, celebrating all the feast days of the church, and we made a grand production of all of the fiestas and celebrations. The Mexican community, after the village was done away with, we have tried to have reunions with as many people that are still living originally from the Mexican Village and their descendants. We try to explain to the descendants what it meant to live in the Mexican Village and what it was like to live there, our culture, our tradition, and our support for one another. Even though our numbers are diminishing, we have tried our best to continue the tradition of sharing our information and our history.
In 1955, the village was dismantled, and many families moved to the east side of Dodge City.